Today's episode is sponsored by EditPods. EditPods provide full-service podcast editing that's all in one podcast editing without breaking the bank. Now, one of the biggest problems that I have when running this podcast is the time it takes to edit, clip, upload, and post my podcast in all of the right places with some new artwork, links, descriptions, and all of the jazz that comes along with it. Now, what EditPods do is help podcasters skip all the hassle and focus directly on making the best show possible, freeing our minds to help hone the craft instead of spending time writing copy and doing transcripts and finding links, all of these time-consuming activities. So, EditPods work with podcasters that want to focus their time on areas of excellence and take the rest off their plate. If that sounds good to you, you can use the coupon code CHATTER to get $30 off Basic or Plus, or $50 off of Premium for the first month. That's CHATTER, CHATTER, for $30 or $50 off your first month at EditPods. Make podcasting fun again. Lovely. So, hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of Chatter. Today I'm here back with Adam B. Coleman. Adam, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me again.
No problem. So, I mean, the first time you were on, we set a nice precedent of talking about lots of controversial things. So, I think it makes sense to just continue with wading right into the middle of the clusterfuck of the abortion discussion that is going on at the minute in America. So, I was interested in chatting to you, like I mentioned before we started, just because you've had and been watching some of the reaction from progressives about this to the Supreme Court, and I've seen some stupid comments already. And like before you even get to how they've reacted to the justices themselves, I've seen people claiming that, you know, the Democrats should try and pack the court. Because I'm like, because that's gonna help. Like, that's a good idea. Like, that's definitely not gonna blow up in your face as soon as like there's a Republican majority again. You know, it's like, just leave it alone. Don't, just, you know, pass a law. Like, literally, get the votes and pass a law. Anyway, we'll get there. So, do you want to like take me back a little bit to, so just maybe lay out for people who don't know what's happened, like what the ruling was, just vaguely, and then what the reaction has been to that at the beginning, and why you decided to start writing about it.
Yeah. So. Basically, the Supreme Court found that Roe v. Wade was actually unconstitutional, but at the same time, they didn't outlaw abortion. Like, the thing about Roe v. Wade is that it was a technicality. It wasn't even necessarily an abortion law. It was just a technicality that would permit the usage of abortion, right? So it's two separate things. But ultimately, they said this is a legislative matter, not a judicial matter. So this needs to go to your legislators. So make a law, basically, is what it came down to. And in some states, they have laws. They have laws revolving around abortion. In certain states that didn't want it, they did things to highly restrict it, right? And so that's not, like, people understood what they were trying to do. They can't outright ban it, but they can make it very difficult for it to happen. So that it was very purposeful for it to happen. Are there states that might make it illegal? Quite possibly. I think a lot of people are prepared for that. But that also tells me that they have no true belief in the federal government to pass anything for abortion. And just to make clear, I am, and this may sound extreme, and I have my reasons for it, as someone who used to be pro-choice. But I am pro-life, 100%, no exceptions. And people like to throw in the guilt, oh, what if they're raped and what if incest? Those extremely, extremely rare situations that are unfortunate for that person, but it doesn't mean the child should die because of someone else's sin. And that's my stance on it. I've talked to women who were born from rape. I know two women that I've had personal conversations with who were born from rape. I know a woman who was raped and had a child, and she advocates for the children to not be aborted in these situations. She said that child is a blessing. Despite what happened to me, the child is a blessing. And for me, that's how I see it. I've become more and more principled on the matter that the child's life matters, right? And so people like to throw in these, kind of straw man situations and these things that aren't even the norm. You know, I gave like an analogy for my wife the other day, kind of like, you're like, we need to do these things to improve the roads, right? And then someone's like, well, what about the situation when the car falls off a cliff? And you're like, well, why are you bringing that? That's extremely rare. We're talking about fixing the road situation that affects a whole bunch of different things. Yeah, but those cars that fall off the cliff, we really need to look out for them. It's like, yeah, but no one's falling off. Like, cars aren't falling off the cliff left and right every day. Like, that's not majority of the car accidents. This is why we need to improve the road, right? They keep harping on this rare and rare situation only to prove the point that they just don't want you to fix the road. And that's ultimately what it comes down to. In the left, the old left that I used to be part of was pro-choice, was hesitantly pro-choice. They said, listen, we're not comfortable with it. We know what it is, but we're leaving it up to the mother to make that decision. That was the mainstream political viewpoint. And it has shifted to a woman's choice and becoming pro-abortion, which are two separate things, to the point where, and this wasn't even rhetoric that I used to hear, that it's a clump of cells. That wasn't like maybe that existed in some extreme position, but that wasn't a mainstream position. This idea that it's not a human, we never fucking thought that. Like, that's insane. Like, we understood this is the early development of a human being. Some animals pop out a creature very early on and it grows outside of it. Like, here, it's within, and it's within for a long period of time. So this, like, to me, it's just amazing that they have to find a way to dehumanize in order to legitimize their argument. They know exactly what it is. And that's why, I've seen debates, or not even really debates, but I've seen conversations where someone who's pro-life just asks some basic questions. So when does life start? Right? And then keep asking them questions, and then keep asking them questions. And what happens is they can't make sense of what their argument is. Ultimately, it just comes down to they want to have the ability to kill their baby. That's really what it's all about for these particular people. They want, it's not about body autonomy and all this other nonsense or oppressing women. They know that's nonsense. Because like you said before, there are plenty of women who are pro-life, who are anti-abortion, who think this is wrong. But what happens is they make this a group issue. They make this a women's issue, and it's not. It's not a women's issue. This is about a baby's issue. This is about a child's issue. This is about life before birth, right? This is about, that's what it actually is. And so for me, the reason I take that hard position is because while, let's say, situations like rape are extremely traumatizing and really terrible to go through, I can imagine, I've never experienced that, but I can imagine how it's terrible to go through. I don't think punishing the son for the sins of the father makes any sense to me whatsoever. So, to think that people need to have this extreme compassion for murder, because that's ultimately what it comes down to. They say, I want to have compassion for this person who experienced this trauma, but their compassion leads to death. And they don't put that together because they don't really care. The pro-abortion movement is a female-led narcissist movement. That's really what it's about. They're about winning. They're about being right. They're about what they want to do, how they want to do. It's a female narcissist movement for the pro-abortion movement, not the pro-choice movement. I would have way more respect, and I do have way more respect for the people who personally wouldn't do it, but understand that maybe there are some reasons that some people may do it. And they want to sit in that position. And even though my stance is on the opposite, I understand that position, but I don't understand the homicidal tendency kind of mindset that the pro-abortion movement is on. I will never understand that. I understand it actually, but I'll never legitimize it as to being like a valid position to take. And neither should anybody who is a moderate Democrat, a moderate liberal, should accept that this movement has turned into a pro-abortion movement. When you have these crazy people who are showing up, there's a picture that's going around, a pregnant woman that says "not a human" on her stomach as she's pregnant. Like the mental gymnastics, the level of insanity that has to exist. Because you have to imagine, like, I don't think people think of it like this. People don't just show up somewhere, right? That means you woke up one day, you put on your clothes, you exposed your belly, you looked in the mirror, you wrote on your belly, you consciously got on a car or a train or bus or whatever to show up to an event, and you made all of these decisions along the way. And at no point did you say, this is not a bad idea. Like, that's how insane this is.
Yeah.
So
it's. I think the way you defined things there, to say that like the old left was like hesitantly pro-choice, and that's basically where like my opinion is basically that like it's bodily autonomy. And it's like, I don't believe that the government should have the right to legislate like in that way at all. I don't, like, the government doesn't have that. They can't tell me, in my mind, they shouldn't be able to tell me what drugs I can take. They shouldn't be allowed to tell me what I do to my body generally. And the part that makes me hesitantly uncomfortable about this topic is basically the point at which we consider whatever is inside you to be like human and alive. And I don't really know like where that point is. Like I don't believe I'm the one to be like the moral arbiter of it, and it makes it very, very difficult, because then like people demonize like the pro-life like movement, and it weirds me out, because I'm like, do you not get like what their point is? It's like they think that's a human. Like, would you not expect them to like vehemently back up that thing's like that baby or fetus's right to be alive? Like, if they think and they believe like you do that's a person, why would you expect them to be fine with killing it? It's like it's this weird thing that's like, and I've noticed this actually not just on the abortion debate of late. It's like nobody seems to get what the other side's argument is. Like, they just flat out don't understand it. Like, and it's not even like a vague misunderstanding. Like, I've seen two things this week. Like, one was this left-wing doctor woman, Dr. Julia Patterson, who I've actually had on this show, who was talking about she was like, oh, what even is the woke, like, what is the woke agenda? Like, is it just people complaining because they think people care too much? And I was like, you're on Twitter like every day, like ranting about people, and you don't understand what the other side's point is. Like, and there was another guy who was claiming that basically was like equating all social conservatism to racism, and I was like, what? Like, how do you not get like the other, like, because I mean, like I said, I find it like difficult to put myself where I'm at in this argument, and I feel like I'm like hesitantly pro-choice, but I understand what the pro-life argument is. Like, what is wrong with people? Like, does no one like take the time to understand like what their opponent's arguments are anymore?
Yeah, it always reminds me of I'm a big comedy fan, Louis C.K. I can't remember which stand-up it was, but he's like, don't you understand? They think you're killing a baby. He's like, I get it. Like, they think you're killing a baby. That's why they're upset. Like, you don't understand that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's and I hope actually that maybe some people listening have like heard your case and like maybe now understand, like they may not agree with you,
Yeah.
and yeah, like I don't think I completely agree with you, but like I respect your opinion because you know you're honest and open about why you think it, and it makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Like it's not illogical, but yeah. So
I'm not
that
trying to control women's bodies. I'm not trying to be a racist.
yeah,
Like I
you're
don't.
just saying
Yeah.
I think that's a human, and I mean, fair enough, man. Like I can't tell you I can't tell you you're wrong. As I've said, like I don't know. I'm not the one who should be the arbiter of this. So then
Mhm.
we've had this ruling from the Supreme Court, and then which was kind of already expected given that leak that happened, but
Yeah.
then the reaction to this has been I've been watching your Twitter feed, man, and anyone listening, go check out Adam's Twitter right now because like it's amazing. So would you like to like explain what the reactions that you've seen and you've been documenting in the piece you're kind of writing?
Sure. So basically, what I started noticing, um, there were six judges who basically um, gave their, I don't want to say vote, but basically helped to overturn it. Um, and so, like I said, I always understand why people are upset. Like I understand if someone's pro-choice, why they feel the way they do and being upset about Roe v. Wade, right? I think some of them forget that this can be a legislative thing if they really want it to be. And that's ultimately what they're saying. So I think some people just truly don't understand. They think abortion's been banned outright or something like that. Um, and it hasn't been. But what has been interesting to me has been how all, let's say 95% of the negativity has been directed at Justice Clarence Thomas. Justice Clarence Thomas is the only Black man on the Supreme Court, and he was obviously the only Black man who voted or who said that it should be overturned with his reasons, right? Now, mind you, Justice Alito was the one who penned the opinion as to why, right? Alito's not really getting anything. Kavanaugh's not getting, even Amy Coney Bryant
Mm.
is barely receiving any criticisms. What's been happening is all of it has been put on Clarence Thomas, which is interesting. And so it should be interesting to other people, but it's not interesting to me because I know why. It's very obvious. And it's one of those things that I've been trying to explain to people about progressives, because this has been coming from the progressives, not even really the typical moderate liberal. They may not like Justice Thomas, right? And I tried to make the point, this isn't about Clarence Thomas, right? I get if someone doesn't like him for whatever reason, I'm cool with that. Like you don't have to like everybody. I understand someone who isn't conservative who doesn't like him. That's not what this is about. What this is about is you cross a line when you start using racial epithets towards him because he did something that you don't like, or because he believes something you don't believe, or because he behaves in a way that you don't find acceptable. When you start attacking him for having a white wife, when you start calling him an Uncle Tom, or when you start calling him the N word, I don't know if I can say it or not here, but
Go
when they
for
start
it.
calling him, all right,
You
when
can
you start
say it.
calling him a nigger, like, yeah, I am allowed to say it. But when you start calling him that because he did something that you didn't like, um, to me, that shows me who you actually are. That shows me that you are the person that I've always thought you were. And so from my perspective, I've been seeing this I've been really honing in on it for about the past year, where it's just plain as day who these people are. But I've been seeing it beforehand. And I've been dissecting it and dissecting it. And I've had these opportunities to write for publications to point out how the behavior of progressives and how they see things And what people don't understand is that I've listened to progressive media. I understand how progressives think, right? And I've also consumed, some of the Marxist progressive viewpoints and stuff like that. So this isn't coming from, they're on the opposite end of me and I just don't like them. I'm coming from a place where I'm listening to them say one thing and advocate for the opposite. I'm listening to them say, for example, I care about Black lives, but I want to defund the police in some of the most dangerous areas that are majority Black. How does that work? I want to have bail reform and make it easier for criminals to get out while I'm also wearing a BLM shirt saying that I care about Black lives. How does that exactly work? And so what ends up happening is I feel like sometimes I have to break things down for people to see what I'm talking about, not in a paranoid way, but just in a way that other people aren't breaking down for you. They're not explaining it in a good way. They're not communicating it properly in some cases. But what is special about this moment and why my Twitter feed has been looking the way it has been looking basically since this past Friday, or just past the ruling, is because this is one of those rare opportunities where they're showing exactly who they are. They are a bunch of racists. They're hateful people. They're classists. And because they're classists, they don't like anybody who doesn't belong into their group of whatever. And they look down upon people, right? So they look, and it's very easy if you're a classist and a hateful person to look down upon Black people, right? So yeah, you might think that they're unfortunate, that they're ignorant, they don't know what they're doing, but I'll help them. They need my help, right? And that's where the savior complex comes in. And so for me, I wanted to take full advantage of the veil being lifted. I want to take full advantage of all these people showing exactly who they are. When Uncle Clarence goes trending on Twitter, I think at one point it was like 25,000 tweets of Uncle Clarence.
Yeah, I'm just scrolling through these Uncle Clarence ones that you're like on the screen here for people watching. It's absolutely unbelievable. Like, I mean, but like, so right, just to play like devil's advocate here in like a very big way, is just that it's funny that the left, who would be, if there was like anything vaguely approaching what they would consider to be racism, even if it was like implicit, unbeknownst to like it's accidental, quiet racism that you don't even realize until you've taken one of those like bias tests, or like even just like words that signal that you're in the wrong camp, like ideologically, or use the wrong term that's not quite politically correct, is like, it's immediately like, oh well, you must be racist. Right. And then they're happy to like use this term, which like actually for me and for people listening, like I kind of think I understand where this term comes from, but like could you explain for people as well, like what is like an Uncle Tom?
Sure. So it comes from a book called Uncle Tom's Cabin. It's basically about slaves and the master's house and all this. But basically, the reason they call him Uncle Tom is making reference to this book, because one of the slaves basically turns on the rest of the slaves. So he's painted as a traitor, right? The way that people use Uncle Tom, for one, Uncle Tom, the character in the book, is not the traitor. It's actually a guy called Sambo. So they have the wrong person, but let's just give the benefit of the doubt. They're just referring to the book, right? The problem is that what they're indicating is that he's a racial traitor, and they're calling Clarence Thomas a racial traitor, and that is something that I have a problem with. I've had a problem with it for a long time. This is something that actually Black people use against other Black people, right? When they think that you're doing something that is not authentically Black, that's something that is deviating from whoever it is thinks that is Black, they will call you an Uncle Tom, amongst other things. Uncle Tom, Coon, some may even call you Sambo, pick me, meaning you want to be picked by white people. You name it, they will call you that. And it's something that has existed for, whether it be moderately right, conservative, whatever you want to say. It doesn't even have to be political. It could be social. It could be that I have a white girlfriend, right? Then that could precede something else to call you that. It could be I speak a certain way. It could be I dress a certain way. Whatever it may be, it's down to whoever is calling you whatever they think, right? But it's something that has existed within the Black community that no one really talks about because no one really cares. Because whoever is getting labeled that, they're the minority of a minority. No one really cares. But in politics, it's also been implemented amongst Black people within politics. They will label this person a coon. I've been called a coon by someone who's Black, right? So they'll do this stuff, and I'm well aware of it. I know about it. I wrote about it in my book. I'm prepared for it. I really don't care what people call me. I stopped caring about that stuff years ago. But the thing about it is I recognize how racist that is, and two, how unfair it is. And so I wanted to use this opportunity to point out how unfair it is and how racist it is. Now, I kind of purposely only talk about white progressives, only because they're the ones who are leading the progressive movement within America. Obviously, Black Americans are 13% of the population. It's a very, very small population of Black Americans that are actually progressives or who come anywhere near this. They exist for sure. They for sure exist, especially in academia, they exist. But my sight is on the white progressives, because they're the ones who have been chastising Americans for the past 2 years about how righteous they are and how everybody needs to check themselves and do the work and check their biases, right? But the moment a Black man does something that they don't like, immediately they go straight to the racial epithets. And someone, this one guy on Twitter that I've seen before, he's like, well, I don't think this was racial. And my question would be, did they call Brett Kavanaugh Uncle Brett? Why did they call Clarence Thomas Uncle Thomas? Stop being fucking disingenuous. You know exactly what they're doing. The progressives will, like you said before, in 2 seconds, they will say, that's a dog whistle. That's the term I was looking for. Yeah. They'll say that in the most innocuous thing. In plain sight, they say he's an Uncle Tom. I've heard them say Clarence Thomas is a nigger. I wrote in the article, you referenced it before, I wrote an article for the New York Post where I listened to a Twitter Spaces discussion where there's multiple Black people who are on the panel, so they can speak. That means they can unmute themselves, they can talk. And a white guy gets on there and is so upset. He gets to a point and he says, Clarence Thomas is a nigger, and continues. And no one jumps in and says anything. That is the problem. That's the problem, that these progressives are so unprincipled. They're so political, even the Black ones. And I became really frustrated also with Samuel L. Jackson, calling him Uncle Clarence. And I was saying that when Black people do this shit, it gives white progressives license to do it as well. And when they do it, you don't say anything, so they keep doing it. So, and I had a screenshot of someone, and when I saw it, I was like, exactly. They said when Samuel L. Jackson called him Uncle Clarence, it made me love this motherfucker even more. And I was like, I don't know what more proof do I need to have that they love this shit. They love it when Black people come out here and call other Black people demeaning names. And that's because they are racist and they are professional projectionists. Everything that they claim that other people are doing, they are doing themselves. I was just telling you before how now they're trying to go after this woman who's of Latin descent, because she won as a Republican. Now they want to call her Tio Thomas, right? They want to call her an aunt Tom. Basically the same ire to it. And this one woman, I just posted up, said, "Why don't you go back to your country? Isn't that what Republicans say?" That is projection. Like, no Republican has ever said that on a public stage, on a public forum. Go back to your country. That's not even a thing. But this woman is projecting onto Republicans. That is ultimately what I'm talking about. These people are racist, and they try to convince everybody to behave like racists so they can save society in some magical way. And nothing gets my blood boiling these days more than progressives, because they are the biggest hypocrites. They're extremely detrimental to our society, and they're raging narcissist asshole racists.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah, I will say, actually, Trump said something pretty much that. He was like, Mexico, we're sending like drug dealers and like criminals and like basically we need to keep them all out because they're all awful. So I was kind of approaching that, but that was like the most extreme example of it. And I don't think Trump's views on immigration are representative of most people. I would say I think he's probably a little bit more extreme on that. But then even then, I know what you're going to say, that it's not, he wasn't like trying to send people home. He was saying that we shouldn't allow people to illegally cross the border into the country.
Actually, just to add to it, one of the things when I really examine, and this is not making excuses for Trump. I hate when I'm put in positions to like defend Trump.
I know, man.
That's not what I'm trying to do. But Trump is a terrible communicator. Right. He's a great motivator. He is a terrible communicator. And so I understand what happens is you end up learning Trumpese, right? You understand what he's trying to say. Like the whole thing where they were saying he was telling people to put Clorox bleach in themselves to get rid of COVID. That's not what he was saying. Like he was fumbling through a transition. He was like, wow, that's so great. Well, it's so wonderful. Well, we got to find a way to see how we can put that in. Like he was trying to keep the crowd amped up by saying like, the riffing, opening act was great.
He's riffing. Right? He's just riffing. He's a bullshit artist. Like that's right. What it is.
He's just bullshitting. And then people are like, he wants this to put it. I was like, no, that's not what he was saying. Like, stop it. So it's the same thing. Anytime you try to talk about national policy, especially when you're talking about policy affecting other countries, they will weaponize that country's ethnicity. So we can't ever talk about cartels bringing shit into our country. We can't. I don't know if you saw, but they just found a trailer full of 46 dead people.
What?
I believe it's in Texas.
I
believe it's in Texas. This just came out, I think, last night. Why is that happening? Because there's an entire industry of human trafficking that exists. So when Trump says they're bringing their worst people into our country, he's not exaggerating. That woman that I was talking about, the Hispanic woman, lives on the border. Like these are her husband's part of border control. Like they understand what is happening down there. This is not a race thing, because most of the people that live down there are of Mexican descent. They're Hispanics. Like they understand what's going on here, and no one is doing anything about it. And when you're critical of the Mexican border, the Mexican situation, they want to call you racist, and that's not what's happening. Yeah, 46. Yeah, in Texas.
Yeah. Just sharing it with you now, like it's wild, isn't it? That's absolutely insane. And people, and I had this is what I got like a bit mad at the other day when I was mentioned earlier that there's like the guy who doesn't understand like social conservatism, because like he was talking about how you might not want like completely open borders, and I was just like, wanting some level of control of your international border is not a racist concept. Like that's like that. No, but that's what it gets made out to be, and it's like,
Yeah.
it's like, no, man, like it's really awful that these people, like, because when it becomes, when you get this level of like illegal immigration, then people die, like, and I don't really know how you solve that problem, because like there's always going to be people who are attempting to cross borders illegally to claim asylum. Like Britain's dealing with it at the minute, where there's a lot of refugees coming from the Middle East, parts of Africa, Ukraine, I would assume now as well. Actually, although I think they've got it a bit easier than people trying to cross the Med, but they're in search of like a better life. Like, fair play to them. I mean, I'm not sure I would have the balls to get into dinghies and try and cross the channel, let alone the Med. But they're trying to cross the English Channel, and then once they're on British soil, then they can claim asylum, basically. And I don't really know what you do. People are gonna try this, and all it does is it funds crime and human trafficking, and it's such an awful situation. But just saying no, anyone can come in, like, just like, let's have no border control whatsoever, is the most bonkers and stupid thing I've ever heard. And apparently that is racist. I don't know, man. Like, that just seems like you want some kind of border control. Like, no one thinks that the passport checks when you land in a new country is racist. Like, do they? I mean, maybe, but seriously, because that's immigration control, like checking your fucking passport. But anyway,
and you know what? Can I? And if I could add a little bit,
sorry.
For your listeners who may not be aware of this, the southern border has turned into an entire industry of itself. There have been many situations, and people think it's crazy when you say this, but there have been many situations where people who are not from Central America and not from Mexico, who are crossing the border illegally. There are Haitians who have crossed the border illegally. Now think to yourself, where is Haiti? Haiti's in the Caribbean. How are Haitians making their way to Mexico to cross our border? How about this? How about people from India? There are Indian people who have attempted to cross the border and have crossed the southern border. Why? Because there's an entire industry of human trafficking into our country. Some of those people are told that they're going to make their way into the country by coyotes, and they end up in sex trafficking, which is a different thing. Some of them have children who wind up in sex trafficking as well and spread throughout this country. So those people who are in those trailers, that, let's say if they lived and made it to whatever destination, we have no idea where those people were going. We don't know if they were going to be used in a way that is of a slavery sense, because now they're illegally in a country. Are they going to go to the police and get deported? Right? So they don't, like, people don't understand how having the bad border turns into all different types of exploitation of human beings who I've met people who are illegal into this country. Like, I get why they're here. Like, there's no confusion about it. I get it. I get if you're in a country where they're threatening you to join the gang or they'll kill your family. I get why you're leaving. However, certain countries, for one, can't take everybody from every country, and we can't solve the problems of other countries' problems. It is a harsh reality that we have to accept. And America, as wonderful as people think it is, and as much money people think we have here, it's not sustainable the way that it's going. And I think that people are weaponizing empathy to continue to have this catastrophe at the southern border. And just because you hate Trump and Trump says something doesn't mean that he's wrong, right? He may be saying it in a crappy way, but he's right. They are bringing rapists. They are bringing criminals across the border. They are paying coyotes to come through. They're also trafficking people. Let me tell you also one of them. I'm ranting a little bit, but I think it was the last debate. It was either the last debate or second to last debate between Trump and Biden. Trump had mentioned that there's coyotes coming through, and Twitter, progressive Twitter, said Trump is so stupid. What coyotes? He doesn't know anything. And they were like putting pictures of coyotes. They have zero idea what a fucking coyote is, yet they're so egotistical and so elitist and high-minded that once people realize that this is their response, they have zero idea as to what's going on, yet they have so many opinions about the southern border. They don't even have the vaguest clue as to what is really happening down there. The southern border isn't being overrun by a bunch of Mexicans, right? There might be some Mexicans who are coming through, but it's people from Guatemala, El Salvador, Brazil, Haiti, and even from parts of Europe. Like everybody is coming through. India, Pakistan, right? People who have wealth who can fly from Pakistan and India all the way to the southern border and pay coyotes, pay traffickers, right? This is an entire industry that people don't realize. And you were saying, what can you do in England? I don't know exactly what you can do other than saying, hey, we see you on the dinghy, get on our boat, we'll send you right back to France. You deal with this shit, EU.
Yeah, I mean, but like this, I wanted to ask you this because this is the part of the immigration question that I often don't really know how to answer. It's like in the case of the UK with like Syria or Iraq or Afghanistan, and then in the case of America with like the southern border and a lot of those Central and South American states, the UK or America has played like a really, really huge role in destabilizing these countries, like either deliberately or just by function of not giving a fuck. Like it's and I almost feel like a sense of moral responsibility to say, yeah, we're gonna accept that this was the cost of our really poor actions, and that it's up to us to kind of like look after the people who are fleeing our bombs or fleeing the despotic regimes that we put in place or unleashed. Like, what do you make of that argument?
So my thing is this: you didn't do anything. The English people didn't do anything. The government did. And what ends up happening is that the people pay for the destructive behavior of the government. I rail all the time. I'm anti-war. We should have been out of Afghanistan a long time ago. Probably shouldn't even ever gone in, but we should have been out of Afghanistan a long time ago. But what happens is there's so much interest in quote unquote nation building, finding resources, controlling resources, all these things that we don't really have to do. Like we really don't. But there's so many high level interests from within the government and private industry that is funded by the government to do these things. So should the people pay for the sins of the government is the real question.
I mean, so for me, that is an interesting way to look at it, but it's like, for me, it's difficult at a point to separate the two, because like, is a nation the government? Is a nation the country? Is a nation the people? Is it the land? And I kind of feel like all of those issues get in many senses like all have to be viewed as like one entity. It's like, especially when it's such recent history. I understand that case more so, like the further you would go backwards in time, the more I would take your point to be yeah, right. But it's like when we're talking about like so for example, right, in 2000 oh, I forget the fucking time now. When Theresa May was Prime Minister of the UK, there was
Yeah.
a bunch of alleged chemical attacks by Assad on his own people, and it turns out basically that it seems that they didn't happen. However,
Yeah.
said chemical attacks were used as justification for the bombing of Syria. They stamped it through immediately, no debate in Parliament, which was technically illegal given that there was no evidence that it actually took place. But that had been the mainstream narrative, and they decided to retaliate. And then the British people, we accepted that from our government. We said, okay, we didn't even vote the party out in the next election. They won again. And in my mind, that is like essentially complicity in saying we're fine with your foreign policy. It's not, it's like, it's okay. Like you're doing enough other good things that we're fine with your foreign policy. And therefore, I feel like we should have to deal with the consequences of our foreign policy. Do you know what I mean?
No, I completely understand where you're coming from. And so let's say I take your position. Then the next question is, where's the limit?
Mm.
Do you take everybody from Afghanistan? Do you take everybody from Syria? Is it right for you to set some sort of limitations? Right. So
Yeah,
I
I mean
get if
limitations. I get like I mean we weren't the only ones being fine with it and being complicit in it.
right,
Like many like you could probably like say all of NATO has their hands in many of these wars. Most of the
yeah,
Western world. So I take your point about like I'm not sure Britain should take sole responsibility. But I mean,
right.
it pisses me off when I see people like taking like what like 10,000 or 50,000 refugees. It seems like if we sorted out our asylum system and housed them, they could either become productive members of society here if they would like to build a new life, or they can go back to Syria if we just stop the war. But we don't. So for me, it's like I don't think we should take all the people, but I don't think we should take none.
So and here's the other thing that might be taboo to say, but how many of them are actual refugees?
Mm.
You know, because let's say, for example, I live in New Jersey, and let's say craziness is happening in Texas, and I want to leave the country because the UK has better opportunities for me. Is it right for me to claim asylum because of what's happening in Texas, but I wasn't actually involved, right? I'm just leaving because economics is getting worse and I want a better life. And I could just say that, well, the United States, because Texas is part of the United States is experiencing turmoil and I want to claim to be a refugee. And so those are the issues that we have to discuss, because at what point is it economic or what point is it danger? And I think maybe so in the very beginning from years ago when that first influx of immigrants were coming through, you can make an argument that a number of them were coming from Syria to flee the war. But when you're talking about, I don't even know how many years later, and people are coming through, you have to kind of ask yourself, is this actually the case? Are they actual refugees? And some of them aren't. And you should also ask yourself, how come, if these are refugees who are fleeing from danger, how come it's only men? Where did all the families go?
Well, I mean, I guess isn't the general plan the man will go ahead and do the dangerous like crossing, and the family will follow once he's set up basically, and like it's somewhere that
All
they
right.
can bring the family. Like as far as I aware, that's like generally what the idea is. I mean, uh,
Well, let me,
to the same like your point about like
yeah.
who are actual refugees is like there's definitely like a case to be made there, but I just don't know what the numbers are in if I'm
Yeah.
honest.
Well, let me answer that, because you just said, all right, the men go ahead and the family stays behind until they're able to settle in, right? So what you're telling me is that the man left the family in a vulnerable position, or he's an economic migrant. He's looking to set up, and then when he can bring them and he's able to send money back and forth, or families help to take care of them in the meantime, which is normal for immigration. Like stuff like that happens here. We have people from the Caribbean. I know people from Jamaica. They came to the United States. The father started. A couple of years later, he was able to bring his family here. That's normal stuff. So when I see nothing but men, and you're telling me that you're escaping danger, it can't all be that they're all just single men and just never had sex ever in their life. And none of them have any children. Like, something about that doesn't seem right. It seems like they are economic migrants, not actual refugees. And so these are things that are even harder to answer, because how do you check this? If you're the UK government, how do you actually check this? Do you contact Syria and see, like, hey, this guy has a name of a lot of people, is very common. He says he's from this place. I don't know. He doesn't have a passport. I don't know how I can like. Actually, true story. I know someone who works in Germany who does stuff with education, and they have people from other countries that come there who claim to be refugees and from. She's like, it is so difficult to verify who they are. And like, I can't verify their education history. I can't verify anything. In a lot of countries, Americans, yes, very easy. I can verify stuff all the time. But when they're coming from Afghanistan and Syria, and they're claiming to be somebody, how do I even check? Right? How do I even know? That's the dangerous part when it comes to all this stuff. You essentially have invisible people in your country, and you don't know if what they're saying is true. I know there are situations where people claim to be from Syria and they're not. So it's a cluster, but it becomes even more of a cluster when, I don't know, Angela Merkel says, come on down. And then they just start coming all through all of a sudden, just like that. So, and Italy was like, sure, have at it. Take them all.
Yeah, the Italians are a little more. Yeah, let's not go there. But we've got kind of sidetracked here. So yeah, I want to go back to just finish off talking a little bit about like the reaction to this that you've personally had as well, to like how you've reacted to this, and it completely blows my mind that people can be so racist. Just like, let's just say it. How can they be that racist and not realize it? Like, because and this confuses me about parts of the left, man. Because like, they're meant to be about compassion and caring and like, not like giving a fuck what someone's like class, creed, or color is. Like, that's the bit that like is meant to be the beautiful part of the left, and like technically like the developed world, is that we're not meant to care about these things. And yet as soon as they don't get their way, it just turns into this like vitriolic, like they become everything they claim to hate, like that. Like, like how do more people not like see this? Because I have been watching it more and more, and like you said, you've sort of been noticing this over the past year, and like so have I, man. Just people just being utter fucking hypocrites, and not like actually having like a moral, like any sort of principles whatsoever, right? So the question I want to ask is that, like, my best friend frequently argues with me that this is because they have no objective worldview. They don't have like a basis, like they don't have the foundational principles of say Christianity, or that they don't have like a set worldview, and they don't they don't have a sense of right or wrong, and that it's something lacking in that, like in a much higher order thing. Like, what do you make of that case?
Yeah, so that's because they're extremely ideological. In almost by the nature of their title, they're progressives. So they're constantly changing, which means that they have no solid foundation. 1 minute it could be this way, and then all of a sudden, no, we need to do this. And for the people who are like, oh, I thought we were doing this, like, catch up, bigot. Like, we're doing this now. And then all of a sudden they have to start doing this. Like there is no foundation to question how they're moving about in society, right? To question between what's moral and what's immoral. And this doesn't mean that someone has to be a Christian to have moral foundation. But what I will say is that, we are a Judeo-Christian like society. A lot of our laws and things of that are based around these values. So when you have people coming and saying we need to discard these institutions, we need to discard these things, for what reason? And they don't have a valid reason. They just say because it's wrong, because it's racist, or whatever reason. Like they just don't have a foundation. That's why, like, what's interesting about progressives and the especially like the cultural Marxists is that they have no culture, right? They're hijackers of culture. They infiltrate a institution and corrupt it, hijack it, and rebrand it into the way they want it to be. Like that's generally how it works. So that's why our movies suck. That we have no edge in our movies anymore. It's all soft corners, padded rooms. Just there's nothing about it that's worthwhile. It's all messaging, virtue signaling, nonsense, progressive nonsense. And the thing that's crazy about it is that there aren't that many of them, right? They're not the majority of our society, thank God. But the problem is that they've infiltrated very influential areas, especially media. And they've infiltrated all these different places for the purpose of changing society. And yeah, I think that most people see beyond it. I think most people see it. The hurdle for them is that they're afraid, right? They're scared. And that's been my whole thing. The reason I feel comfortable calling out progressives because I'm not scared of them. What am I going to? I'm going to be scared of anime avatar guy who says you're a coon behind the screen. Okay, someone called me a coon once, and I was like, all right, thanks for reaching out. I love you. I'm going to go back to cooning around over here. Like I really don't care. Like you think I respect your opinion? So it's people are afraid, and they see situations where people get canceled, and then that keeps them scared. It's like the mafia makes an example of somebody, and then everybody gets in line. That's why we call it the alphabet mafia, because they do the same type of thing. They find one person, make an example out of them, and makes everybody else scared, and they're afraid to say something. So it's the same kind of concept, but people see through it. They're just afraid to say it. And I remember the 60s, I think it was the 60s for the culture, or the 60s or 70s with the cultural revolution.
Yeah.
It was the same kind of thing with all these Marxists. Basically, they were Marxists too. All these Marxists pop up, and all of a sudden we need to fight the power. It was actually worse. It was more violent back then. Now we have a bunch of pampered Marxists who claim revolution, but if they see blood for 2 seconds, they'll fucking scream.
Yeah.
But
the Prosecco Leninists.
Yeah, they're like, yeah, we gotta overthrow the system. They're like, yeah, as you're sipping your Starbucks coffee on your MacBook, like. So we have. Thankfully, we have fake liberation people, fake Marxists. Yeah. But I think ultimately what I'm getting at is that most people see beyond it. The problem is just that the progressives are in influential positions, and they're affecting everybody else. They're dictating what everybody does in school curriculum, within government, you name it, entertainment. Everybody has to sip on this progressive bullshit. And I feel like, and this is not me patting myself on the back because I'm not really that type of person, but I feel like the reason why people are responding to my New York Post article the way that they are is because I'm like the first one to call them out properly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, quite possibly.
Because,
I mean, you're in a unique enough position to do it. Like there's, like I don't know. I'd say that there's probably a lot, like, because didn't the Republican Party get the highest percentage ever of the black vote under Trump? I
yeah,
think,
well,
yeah.
since like Reagan or something
Okay,
like that.
right,
Yeah,
since
a long
Reagan, yeah.
time.
Okay. So then it it kind of suggests to me that like people are rejecting this thing. Like they're not just it's that people aren't just like siding with something because of their race or less so perhaps than it had been for a little while, which is positive
Yeah.
to me. And I think you're probably right about people seeing through it because like whenever I sit here and talk about things like this, like it makes me sound like I love the system and I think it's wonderful. And I'm like, no, right? There are corrupt cunts who have ruined it, and I would love us to all band together and just decide that we're gonna like take these institutions that worked so beautifully for parts of the 20th century. Like obviously there was like more institutional racism, that there was like sexism, like yep, just people be getting there was barriers that perhaps don't exist in people's minds. They're like, I don't think that there's that many people who really care about someone's like identity as such. Like they if they're a good person, I think most people are like, yeah, sweet, that they're nice. Like even the conservatives. Like I was trying to think of some people that would like theoretically shouldn't be accepted by the Republican Party or the conservatives in America. It was like thinking like Caitlyn Jenner, like Blair White, like Douglas
Mhm.
Murray, Peter Thiel, like yeah, these two gay guys. Then there's two trans people that I spoke about, two trans women. Like these are not like if you believe that all the Republicans and conservatives are awful like haters of anyone that's not like a straight white male, then like how the
Mhm.
fuck are these people so popular? Like, it's especially amongst the right. Like it blows me away that people genuinely think that there's that kind of divide. But I think you're right. It's probably the minority, and we are moving beyond it. But anyway, man, I got to run
Yeah.
here. But it's been a great chat. Like great to have you back on the show. Always really interesting, man. And yeah, do you want to like point people towards your Twitter and the article and stuff? And like I'll link it in the description. If it is it up yet?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
What's up?
yeah. Then I'll link it in the description for people. So yeah, do you want to just
Sure.
plug yourself a little?
Sure. So people can follow me on Twitter at wrong_speak. You can also go to wrongspeak.net for different articles that are being published. Um, I'm on Facebook and and Instagram as well, but I'm mostly active on Twitter these days. So definitely follow me. And you can read my articles on New York Post. Just search my name, New York Post. I think I've written 10 of them so far. And I've been very fortunate to have different publications like Newsweek and the Federalist and Human Events to give me the opportunity to express myself. So it's been great, and I'm just trying to do everything possible to not just push back, not just like be rhetorical and push back against woke culture or anything like that. I'm trying to be very specific. I'm trying to explain to people why this is bad, why this is illogical. And right now, I'm trying to explain to people why they're racist. We have essentially racists who are in control of our culture right now, and they're pretending not to be. It's a veil, but we're using this moment to show exactly who they are, and that's why I keep saying it.
Well, that's a great note on which to end. So yeah, thanks very much, man. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks for making it all the way to the end of the podcast. If you want to leave us a comment, that would be awesome. Please like, share, subscribe, and if you're listening on Apple, please leave us a review. Until next time, thanks for listening.